Hey party people, today we're going to be talking about dress forms because last week's draping video, everyone is like, oh, I want all the draping videos. And I'm like, oh, okay. Last week's was kind of like an exploratory, test the waters kind of video. It was also like exploratory draping video. It was not precise. Step 1, do this. Step 2, do this to get this look. Like, it wasn't that kind of video. It was really about learning how to sketch on form, doodle, design doodle, free flow. Okay. And it ended up with this sort of effect. I still don't know if I love her, this little half form. Okay, still don't know. Jury's still out. But this, my beloved, she has been with me since 2006, and I still love her very much. So let's talk about dress forms. Let's talk about all the things you do on dress forms. Obviously, draping. Okay, but number 2 is testing patterns. Okay, and even if you are making clothes for yourself, you do want to test your patterns and fit on a body that's not yourself. Obviously, at some points, you're going to fit things to your own body and test things out. But sometimes you need to put it on another body, whether it's a human or not, and spin it around, see your design and fit from all angles. And that's really what dress forms are for. And that is why you will see multiple dress forms in the sample making studio of fashion companies where you're like, well, they don't really do anything like, you know, wildly innovative in terms of silhouette where they would be draping muslins. Like, their silhouettes are fairly standard. Yeah, but they're testing and they're fitting, and it's good to have a human to reference, you know. Another thing I do with dress forms is to test embellishments. Okay, you definitely can't do it on a half size because you want to take your embellishments, especially anything that are like ready-made patches or appliques, and put them against the body to look at the scale, look at how many you might want, place them on the dress form where you might want them on the dress, pin it, move them around, check out the look of everything. Maybe you have the dress on the form, and then you're like, okay, where do I want these patches? So you start pinning the patches on top of the dress before you decide where exactly you're going to sew them on. So it's really good for testing all that kind of stuff before you get to stitching. This is a dress form because it's made for dresses. You see it has no crotch, okay? This girl is special because she doesn't have a crotch, but she does have a butt, okay? She does have a proper butt. A lot of forms, they kind of have just like this kind of smooth, like, it just kind of goes in. It doesn't have proper butt cheeks underneath, okay? But mine does, okay? They differ from brand to brand. Speaking of brands, this is a PGM, and this is on the cheaper side of things. They still exist as a company, but back in 2006, this is what I could safely afford, and I've taken good care of her, or at least I like to think so. And so she has served me well over these years, okay? I know, like, for me personally, I want a little roomier waist, so I tend to fit things a little bit roomy at the waist, but that's because I know this body, and I know compared to this body how I want things to fit. And you might be thinking, why don't you pad your dress form? Okay, we're going to talk about that in a minute. You can also get a bifurcated form. That's the one with the legs. And those are really important for people who are like jeans companies, people who do full suits, leggings, that sort of thing. If you only do bathing suits and you need the crotch and butt, but you don't necessarily need the legs, you can get one where the legs are just kind of cut off at mid-thigh because those are less expensive. Like the full bifurcated ones with both legs, those are the most expensive because they require the most materials. And those, they have the hook on the top, and then they have this big old bar that comes down, and the dress form is actually hanging from the hook at top instead of it being on a stand like the dress forms are. So they are quite a bit more expensive. I've also seen ones where you only have one full leg. That can be a little bit cheaper because of less materials. So you need to get the one that works for the kinds of garments that you're going to do. You can also get arms. I don't know where mine went. it's lost to the ether. But you can get the kind that are magnetic and they just stick to the metal plate here, or you can get the kind that kind of straps around to the other side. Okay, whatever you think is going to work best for you. They make dress forms in all different sizes, and listen, this one is a 6, but this is not a 6 that, I mean, if you look at size charts for size 6 on average, she's too small. So do not buy your dress form based on the number size on the dress form or attached to it. Look at their size chart, look at the measurements for the dress form, and buy according to the measurements. Okay, it's like bridal. You know how bridal, the sizing, they didn't do the vanity sizing increase with the rest of the industry. And so, you know, a modern size 4 will walk into a bridal shop and end up ordering a size 8. Okay, it's a little bit like that. So check for measurements as opposed to the size. Okay, this is an investment piece. You want to make sure you're getting the correct size. They also make them for different ages. There's children forms. Let me tell you the story real quick. Okay, back when I was teaching at a university, I used to run these labs till like 9 o'clock at night for students who had questions on their homework. Like anyone in any color class, any design class, they could come by and ask me questions. So I'm closing up lab. It's 9 p.m. I'm by myself. Most of the school is gone. Like, our campus was not in a great neighborhood. Shout out to Tenderloin. If you know, you know. And so most kids left by 9 o'clock. And except finals week. Okay. The way my classroom was situated, like I open the door and it just opens right into a sewing studio room. No hallway. Okay. Just you open and there's like cutting tables, dress forms, sewing machines, whatever, right? And that night, it was late, it was empty, it was not finals week or even midterms, and so all the lights were shut off except for the one light bulb over my doorway. And I step outside, and out of the corner of my eye, I see for a split second what I think is a freaking baby laying under one of the cutting tables. And did I scream? Just like, it was a baby dress form. It's a headless child. It was a baby dress form. And it's shaped with like relaxed limbs. Okay, it's not straight up and down military posture like this one. And I straight up thought there was a baby just chilling on the floor. All that to say, they make baby forms. They make them for different sizes, different children. They do petites, which for the fashion industry just means short. It does not mean small. It means short. So everything is like, okay? So all kinds of dress forms. Next question I get a lot is, what size should I get? Okay, so number 1, if you are getting a dress form so you can make clothes for yourself, get your size. If you're getting one to fit your body, but you are not like perfect, like 26, like what is this, 34? Well, she's a 33, 26, 34, okay? If your measurements are not as uniform as the dress form you want to buy, what you want to do is get the measurement that fits your smallest measurement, okay? Whichever one of these it is, whatever is your smallest, because you can add padding, but you can't carve into this thing very easily, okay? And so get that, pad it out. There's a lot of tutorials online for padding dress form. I'm not going to make one because I don't know how. I've never padded a dress form before. Now, another question I get is, but Zoe, the dress forms, they come with all these handy dandy seams. Okay, so we have center front, we have our princess seams, we have our side seam, back princess, we have a waist, you know. The black twill tape are my markers for something I'm doing with my Patreon pattern making class. So that's what the black tapes are. But just the dress form itself has all these handy dandy markers. Okay, so what you want to do is, once you have successfully padded your dress form to the size you want it, make a muslin dress that looks like this, that like perfectly fits over your dress form in the size. And then you're gonna have it make princess seams, side seams, have all those seams, and then sew it right on top of your dress form, right on top of the padding, and you're going to have all those reference seams on the surface. What if you don't want to pad a form? That seems exhausting and tedious and terrible, and you think you're going to do a terrible job. Can you get a custom dress form? Yes, you can. So there are a couple of companies. One is Beatrice, one is Ditto, and I'll drop the links in the description box, but they do custom forms. One of the companies, they teach you how to scan your body using your phone. Another company, they do the scans, like you go to their office and they scan you. They also do these, they visit different cities around the US and scan you and then create a dress form based off of your measurements. So if you really want to invest in your personal future wardrobe, you can get a custom one done, or you can get a custom one done for your brand, like, you know, get one that is the size and shape of your fit model. If you are getting a dress form in preparation for a line or for a line you have already, your dress form should be your sample size. Okay, sample size should be your middle size. So if your size range is straight size, maybe 2 to 14, you should get a 6, maybe an 8, okay, so that you can grade down and grade up. You don't want to do like an extreme end, like you don't want to get a 2 and then grade up a bunch, because the more you grade off of your original size, the more distorted it will look, okay? And I talk about doing graded size sets for new silhouettes all the time, but yeah, so you want something in the middle so you can grade a few down, you can grade a few up, so your dress form should be your middle size. Another question I get is, but Zoe, all those runway models, they wear the runway samples and they're all a size 0 or 2. Yes, those are runway samples. And, you know, companies, you have to understand that the companies who invest in doing runway shows regularly, like they make the effort to do runway samples every season, so they have the really small sizes. But for like the vast majority of fashion companies who do not do runway shows, okay, and listen, let me tell you again, you do not need to do runway shows to be successful, even if you're at a high designer price point level. You don't have to do runway shows, and it's better for your whole size range if you do things to help your graded size run well, okay? There's that not funny industry joke where nothing sells as well as the size of the sample, because the sample size has been corrected and fit and tweaked, and then it was just kind of quickly graded and then sent off, and none of the other sizes, like, they're not graded really great. Nobody tested the fit, not nearly as much as the sample anyway, and so they just don't sell as well because they try them on and they're like, what is happening here? How did my boobs end up over there? If your dress form purchase is for a business, then get your sample size. Something I'm asked a lot by made-to-order custom clothiers is, should I get an adjustable size? Because I'm making stuff for a lot of different clients and I need a lot of different size dress forms. So a while back, I made a video on how to create a successful made-to-order business. Few weeks, few months. Time no longer has meaning, okay, because all I do is think about the book and work on the book. Go watch that if you haven't already. But in general, I don't like those adjustable forms, especially for draping, because there's too many gaps. Okay, the second you start cranking it open to get to bigger sizes, you're creating all these gaps between the tectonic plates of the dress form. And that means you can't pin, tape, nothing. You can't even put twill tape in those gaps. And so what are you doing? You definitely can't drape on it. You can basically only use it for fitting, and you really can only use it for fitting like large pieces. Like you can't just like test out a small section of your design on an adjustable form because it's just so clunky and awkward, okay? And so if you really want a few dress forms, a few sizes, you know, your business should establish kind of a size range that you are capable of catering to, and get a couple on either end of the spectrum to kind of help you with the whole pattern making and fitting process. But ultimately, all the fittings need to be done with your client. Okay. And like the example before, when I was talking about placing patches of beading and stuff, you should be doing that on your client during one of your fittings. Like, come in, the dress is done, we're going to add the beads. So they put on the base dress, you put on the patches, you take a bunch of pictures to make sure you're getting the placement right later on. But I don't like those adjustable forms. Let's talk about brands. This is a PGM. It is on the cheaper end. And I know that it's not the best form. But, like, I don't know. It's kind of like how I drove my Honda Accord until it fell apart. She's trusty. I know her. I know all her ticks. Like, she's fine. And I'm going to keep using her until, like, something really happens to her. Okay? The best brand is Alvanon. Alvanon are the ones that look the closest to actual bodies. Okay, if I were buying a dress form today, I would try to find a lightly used Alvanon on eBay. They are very expensive. Depending on how much I wanted to use the dress form, I actually might, you know, make the investment. There are other brands like Wolf, and, you know, it's like between Alvanon and like a bunch of other kind of middling brands, like, and then I don't really see one that's like, oh, this one is special, and this one is worth this exorbitant price other than Alvanon. And then the rest are just kind of like, what can you get? What can you get that's near you? Like, I've also never heard of a dress form that was like so terrible. Okay? Leave comments below on your reviews and experiences with dress forms, because they're all kind of mediocre, and then Alvanon is like the industry leader. So what is this little one for? It's for flipping around. Okay, I don't know if you know this, but I have a potty mouth. Keeping it clean on YouTube, you know, it's called editing. I keep it clean here, but I definitely have a potty mouth. This is for effing around. And I mean that in a good way. This is for funsies. Okay? This is exactly half. Like, this is a 26 waist, and this is a 13-inch waist. There's that famous photo of Madeline Vianney. She did all of her designing by draping on a half form like this. She would drape. She was known for her bias cuts. She was known for her very interesting drapes off the beaten path. And so she would drape on a dress form and on a half form like this, and just hand it over to her pattern makers. Okay? She was like the OG Comme des Garçons. She, you know, Rei Kawakubo doesn't do her patterns either, okay? This is really for exploratory work. This is for just trying things out and being a little reckless, because you're not really using that much fabric. If you're cutting on the bias, if you have any experience cutting on the bias, you know how much fabric that takes up. It takes such a huge amount of fabric. And so sometimes people get a little bit like precious about using that much fabric, but on this baby, this is really just for messing around and just letting your design brain scribble in 3D. To me, this is like mindless, creative doodling, but on a 3D form. Okay, this is not like, oh, I'm gonna, no. This is not for perfecting fit. This is not for tailoring. This is not for any of that. This is like, let me see where my brain takes me today. This is for effing around, but in a good way. On a side note, I had this student in my pattern making class who was very detail oriented. And they, I don't know their gender, they were telling me that their dress form was asymmetrical. And it was like a 1/4 of an inch different here, and like 3/16 of an inch off here, and things like that. And yeah, dress forms are like that, because that's okay, because human bodies are like that. Most of the industry, outside of Savile Row, Hawk Cooters, everything's made fitting on one side, usually the right-hand side, and then just doubled. Okay, so that you have two identical mirror image sleeve patterns, even if your arms are a little bit different. You go to custom clothiers, a lot of the time, depending on how much you're paying them, to be quite honest, they will do the same, okay, unless they see that there is a very distinct difference. Like, that band leader, the front man for Weezer, he had like one leg that was shorter than the other. Like, unless you see like a actual discrepancy, they'll just mirror image them too. Savile Row, they will make a left pant leg and a right pant leg, and they will be different. They will fit that precisely, okay? So if you're getting a dress form and you're like, oh, it's not perfectly symmetrical, it's fine. If it's very off, that's one thing. But if you're talking like tiny increments of an inch, millimeters, whatever, don't worry about it, because you're going to fit on one side and you're just going to double it. Please give this video a thumbs up if you learned something new today. Share, subscribe, all the ways you show me love. Drop me all your extra questions about dress forms and requests for draping exercises, and I will see you in the next video. I don't know how you would gather this data, but I swear anytime I want to start my outro, a motorcycle drives by.